Before we start, like the video and don't forget to subscribe to the channel too, so we can hit 30,000 subscribers soon. Let's begin. The story begins with a girl named Chae Ni, who starts noticing strange things happening to her after an accident. Surprisingly, she did not die. Instead, she gained a supernatural ability that allows her to teleport from one place to another. And honestly, that is when things become completely insane. Chae Ni is the granddaughter of the owner of a famous restaurant, but her relationship with her grandmother is far from perfect. All Chae Ni wants is enough money to travel somewhere and live whatever life she has left before time runs out. Unfortunately, her grandmother keeps refusing to help her. Later, we see Chae Ni visiting a doctor, where it is revealed that she suffers from severe heart failure. The moment she realizes she could die at any time, she completely loses control of her emotions. Then a mysterious woman suddenly stops her on the street and starts talking about the end of the world. She claims she can save Chae Ni from death, speaking as if she knows secrets nobody else knows. But Chae Ni thinks the woman is completely insane. After all, she believes she will die long before the world ever ends. So how could she possibly change fate? Before Chae Ni can understand anything, the strange woman disappears alongside her group. At the same time, we meet a man named Bao. After falling into strange black water, his skin begins transforming in a horrifying way before he suddenly disappears. His friend later goes to the city office to report him missing, explaining that this is not the first disappearance in town. He suspects there may be a serial killer involved, but nobody takes him seriously. Everyone acts like these disappearances are completely normal. That is when the crazy old man's son appears. He constantly visits the office with bizarre complaints, so every employee tries to avoid him. However, the newly hired worker John is forced to deal with him. Every time John asks a question, Son gives the most ridiculous answers possible. When John starts losing patience, Son immediately threatens to report him to his boss, Kim. Trying to stay calm, John awkwardly asks, "Which Kim exactly, sir?" During lunch, Bao's friend warns John that the town is dangerous and that people keep disappearing one after another. He tells him to be careful because something terrible is happening there. Meanwhile, Chae Ni desperately tries once again to convince her grandmother to give her money so she can leave the country, but her grandmother refuses again, so Chae Ni decides to rely on herself instead. She starts packing her bags and tries borrowing money from one of her grandmother's employees. Unfortunately, the man turns out to be even more miserable than she is. He complains that his roof almost collapsed and that all his money is gone. Chae Ni calls him the saddest man alive. Then, when he asks how she plans to travel without money, she confidently replies, "I may not have money today, but tomorrow I'll have 50 million won." By pure coincidence, Chae Ni and John meet at the same supermarket. Chae Ni is busy buying everything she thinks she needs for traveling, but John becomes suspicious because she is carrying an alarming number of knives. He insists on checking her bag, expecting something dangerous, only to discover that the bag is full of random nonsense, including a doll and other weird items. Honestly, she just looks completely insane. Then Chae Ni's grandmother calls her, and Chae Ni uses the opportunity to demand John's phone number so he can compensate her for the damages. Once again, she begs her grandmother to let her travel, asking emotionally, "If I don't travel now, then when? After I die?" But somehow her grandmother manages to calm her down and asks her to return to being the sweet old Chae Ni she used to know. But then comes the real disaster. Chae Ni comes up with the dumbest plan imaginable and drags Uncle Son and the most miserable man alive into it. The plan is to fake Chae Ni's kidnapping and demand 50 million won from her grandmother. However, the joke suddenly turns real when Chae Ni suffers a fatal heart attack and dies for real. Terrified, the group decides to hide her body in the Diamond Land area. But unfortunately, John happens to be there at the same time. He recognizes Son immediately and becomes suspicious about why he is there. Then he discovers Chae Ni's corpse, except the body suddenly falls into the same mysterious black water that transformed Bao earlier. At that moment, Chae Ni's grandmother hires people to locate her granddaughter. When they track her location, they become confused confused because the records first show Chae Ni outside the city, and then suddenly inside Diamond Land. John corners the group and pressures them into confessing to Chae Ni's murder. But then something impossible happens. Chae Ni's body completely disappears. In the chaos, John accidentally calls the police. The officers arrive, and everyone is certain Chae Ni is dead, until she suddenly reappears alive right in front of them as if nothing ever happened. Naturally, everyone is horrified, especially John, because he personally saw her corpse with his own eyes. The police try investigating the murder case that somehow is not a murder case, but Uncle Sun stubbornly insists that everything is just a misunderstanding and that Chae Ni is simply a walking disaster who keeps causing problems like a monkey. Later, when they visit Chae Ni at the hospital, the group panics about how her grandmother will react. One of them nervously asks Chae Ni how her grandmother was even supposed to transfer 50 million won. Chae Ni casually answers, "Obviously to my personal bank account." The poor guy realizes he almost destroyed his own life by following someone as chaotic as Chae Ni. Unfortunately for them, Chae Ni's grandmother overhears the entire conversation. The moment she walks into the room, everyone starts acting unbelievably innocent. Then things become even stranger when Chae Ni suddenly disappears from the closet where she had been hiding and starts talking nonsense about seeing strange people and terrifying visions. Her grandmother becomes deeply worried and immediately asks the doctors to examine her. At the same time, Bao's friend is shown talking to a woman who looks exactly like his dead wife, hinting that she may also be connected to the mysterious organization trying to save humanity from the apocalypse. He reveals that years ago, he was actually the one who saved John's life during a fire. He also explains that John possesses supernatural abilities too, specifically the power to control the movement of objects, but John never recognized him. Meanwhile, John keeps remembering strange moments from his past, especially a mysterious little boy who once saved him and confidently said, "Don't worry, I never die." Now John cannot stop connecting that memory to Chae Ni somehow, but it makes no sense. How could Chae Ni possibly be that little boy? John slowly begins suspecting that the disappearances, Chae Ni's resurrection, and the people preaching eternal life may all be connected to the coming end of the world. Then comes the biggest shock of all. While examining Chae Ni at the hospital, her grandmother notices something unbelievable about her granddaughter's body. The doctors rush to check her condition, only to fall into complete panic. Somehow, Chae Ni's heart failure is completely gone. Her health is now perfectly normal. She is no longer sick, no longer dying, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with her anymore. It is literally a miracle. Finally, we see Sun and the miserable employee arguing about everything that happened. Sun regrets ever getting involved in the kidnapping plan in the first place. But during the fight, another shocking secret is revealed. They also possess supernatural powers. When the miserable man angrily throws a can, it smashes straight through a wall like a bullet. Both of them freeze in shock, unable to understand how a simple throw could destroy an entire wall like that. We then see Sun returning home, where his wife starts asking about his mother's trip. She assumes they obviously cannot afford to send her to Hawaii because of the expenses. But after she goes to sleep, something strange suddenly happens. The refrigerator sticks to Sun's hand, and even he becomes shocked. He stares at it in confusion and wonders whether the problem is with the refrigerator itself. If that is the case, maybe there is a solution. But if the problem is actually him, then how are they supposed to fix that? Meanwhile, Chae Ni's grandmother starts questioning her more seriously about her travel plans. Chae Ni honestly admits that she simply wanted to escape somewhere and live freely before it became too late. Surprisingly, her grandmother finally decides to support her. She even gives Chae Ni a passport she secretly prepared for her long ago, but under one condition: Chae Ni must behave properly for a while and take good care of her health. Her grandmother then tells her something emotional. She says that during the 27 years she spent watching over her, this is the happiest news she has ever heard. Chae Ni is finally healthy, mature, and no longer weak or dying. Now she can truly live happily, travel the world, and visit every place she ever dreamed about. The next morning, Chae Ni looks at herself with overwhelming happiness. For the first time in her life, she feels like her real life is finally beginning. Her bruises are gone, her body no longer hurts, and she convinces herself that all the strange things she saw before were probably just hallucinations. Everything should finally be normal now, but of course peace never lasts. The handsome John suddenly appears in front of Chae Ni and casually asks, "So, how many times have you died already?" Chae Ni immediately tries to dodge the question and pretends everything is nonsense. But after learning from the miserable Robin that John saw them on the day of the accident, she becomes nervous. Then she discovers that Robin never deleted the security footage from that day, so she rushes desperately to reach the camera before anyone else sees it. Unfortunately, John refuses to let the matter go. He secretly begins following Chae Ni everywhere, wondering whether she is truly immortal or if she simply possesses supernatural powers. At one point, he even considers dropping a flower pot on her head just to test whether she would survive, but then hesitates, thinking, what if she is actually just a normal person and dies for real? Chae Ni notices him following her and tries escaping, but John eventually reaches the camera before she does. At that moment, John decides to take things to the extreme. He literally causes part of the place to collapse, just to see whether Chae Ni will die or survive. But the shocking truth is finally revealed when Chae Ni escapes instantly at incredible speed and suddenly appears on a ship far out at sea. That is when John realizes her supernatural ability is rapid teleportation or super speed movement. At the same time, Sun is secretly watching everything from a distance. Meanwhile, Chae Ni finds herself trapped aboard the ship when the crew suddenly discovers her. Believing she is dangerous, they decide to either kill her or throw her into the ocean. They actually shoot her, causing her to disappear completely, only for her to instantly reappear right beside John. He becomes so startled that when she suddenly gets close to him, he accidentally hits her, sending her flying through the air. But instead of being hurt, Chae Ni looks unbelievably happy while flying. When she wakes up later, she finds herself at miserable Robin's place. Robin explains that Sun brought her there before leaving. While looking around, Chae Ni notices the giant hole in the wall and asks about it. Robin explains what happened, making Chae Ni realize something is seriously wrong. She immediately decides to go find Sun. At the same time, Sun is trying to calm down his angry wife after coming home late because of Chae Ni. When she asks where he was, he awkwardly lies and says that a friend's father died. His wife gets furious because she knows he does not even have friends. Then, for the second time, Sun's hand suddenly sticks to a plant. He desperately tries pulling his hand away but cannot, so he nervously tells his wife to go ahead while he follows behind later. Soon after, Chae Ni and Robin arrive and begin confronting Sun. Chae Ni insists that he is not normal either and that he definitely has powers just like them. Sun immediately pushes them away and tells them he simply wants to raise his daughter and live peacefully with his wife. Ever since they entered his life, non-stop disasters have been falling onto his head. Chae Ni stares at him suspiciously and says, "Why do I feel like you're hiding something? What exactly changed?" That is when Sun finally tells them everything John did. Chae Ni storms straight toward John afterward. She walks up to him holding multiple papers and demands, "Can you tell me what exactly you were doing yesterday?" John pretends not to understand anything, but Chae Ni continues aggressively, mentioning how he nearly destroyed the entire place. John keeps trying to avoid her by pressing random buttons and pretending to be busy. She follows him everywhere, even pulling out more papers while he desperately asks co-workers for extra tasks just so he can escape her. Eventually, one co-worker feels bad for him and tries helping him escape, but outside the building, Sun and Robin are already waiting for him. At the same time, Chae Ni's grandmother finally visits Director Choi, whom she has been trying to meet for a long time. Sadly, she discovers he is already dead. However, he left behind a message claiming that Dr. Wando is innocent and that everything was just a misunderstanding. He describes Wando as a respectable researcher, but the truth is far darker. We discover that Dr. Wando was actually the man conducting horrific experiments on children inside the orphanage. He is responsible for countless disasters, and he was even the one who murdered Director Choi. More importantly, he has been searching for the so-called immortal child. And then comes the huge revelation. That immortal child is Chae Ni herself. Meanwhile, the police investigate a massive mansion that has received countless complaints connected to missing people. While searching the property, one officer notices another hidden storage area underground. A mysterious woman suddenly joins the search, and deep below the building, Bal is hiding there. Before the officers can discover him, the woman cleverly replaces the entire horrifying scene with a beautiful fish tank illusion, hiding all evidence completely. Even Bal's friend cannot find anything anymore. Later, John desperately tries distancing himself from Chae Ni and the others, wanting nothing to do with their chaos. But Chae Ni and Sun keep mocking him, calling him a coward who refuses to use his powers to help people. John insists he wants no involvement in anything that could bring him trouble or headaches, so Chae Ni suddenly steals his bag and runs away. Then Sun and Robin force themselves into John's car, where the two start loudly discussing their powers while John sits there completely confused. Eventually, Chae Ni explains everything clearly and insists that John must help them. At the same time, a police car carrying two officers nearly crashes to their deaths. Chae Ni and Robin quickly rush to save them. When Sun intervenes, his strange power activates again, causing him to become physically stuck to the vehicle itself. It seems his powers appear whenever he becomes emotional. Robin desperately pushes him away to stop him from dying with the car. And in the biggest surprise of all, it is actually Robin who successfully saves Sun. Neither Chae Ni nor John manages to do anything. Afterward, the group once again tries convincing John to join them and use their powers to help people in exchange for money, but John refuses completely, saying he wants no part in anything that will bring him stress or trouble. Chae Ni argues that helping people is a good deed, and that any rewards could simply be split between the four of them. John still refuses and walks away. The second he leaves, Sun complains loudly, "Good riddance. I swear I can't stand that kid. Better for the money to be split between us instead." Meanwhile, John secretly continues investigating the town's sewer system and underground tunnels. There, he discovers connections to the Church of Salvation and their terrifying end-of-the-world ideology. Still, he keeps convincing himself that none of this has anything to do with him and that he is just a completely normal person, but the past refuses to leave him alone. Outside, John suddenly encounters his old friend from the orphanage. Another child who was experimented on and transformed into a monster. The boy tries convincing John that they are not monsters at all. According to him, Dr. Wando gave their lives meaning instead of letting them remain worthless, abandoned children. To him, Wando is more important than anyone else in his life. But John angrily argues back, telling him that Dr. Wando is destroying the town, kidnapping innocent people, and turning them into monsters exactly like him. The boy simply smiles coldly and replies, "No, we're cleansing the city of useless people." Refusing to continue the conversation, he walks away to complete the task his superior assigned him. Then, suddenly, Chae Ni appears again and nervously tells John that the two police officers disappeared and never even reached the hospital. She begins panicking, wondering if the same thing could happen to her too. What if her powers suddenly disappear? What if she becomes sick again? What if her abilities have an expiration date? Before John can answer, his female co-worker arrives looking for him. We quickly realize she secretly has feelings for him. John tries making Chae Ni leave, but Chae Ni stubbornly refuses until he answers all her questions. She even pokes him with a pen to stop him from escaping. When his co-worker asks him for help later, John surprisingly agrees to attend dinner with her that night, but then Chae Ni suddenly appears again, except this time she is somehow stuck in the ceiling. She begs John to help get her down. After helping her, he finally answers all her questions honestly. He assures her that she will not die, but warns her to hide her powers carefully so nobody captures her and makes her disappear like the others. Hearing those words fills Chae Ni with overwhelming happiness, and she immediately runs off excitedly. And honestly, it looks like John is slowly starting to grow attached to her too. When John realizes Chae Ni is in danger, he immediately tries to save her from his evil co-worker. He even asks her to team up with him and help him clean up the mess. Chae Ni becomes unbelievably happy after hearing that. She rushes to tell her grandmother the news, then practically tells the entire neighborhood out of excitement. But of course, happiness never lasts for long. The moment Chae Ni enters the restaurant, she freezes in shock when she sees who is waiting for her there. It is Dr. Wando himself. The doctor calmly begins reminding her that her grandmother was once one of the biggest supporters of his immortality project, but Chae Ni quickly defends her grandmother, saying she only supported the project because she cared about saving children. Then she becomes confused and asks him how he still remembers all of this. When he asks about the immortal child, she coldly replies that the child is dead. After hearing that, Dr. Wando quietly leaves, while Chae Ni starts wondering if she is simply imagining things. At the same time, memories from John's nightmares finally reveal the truth about the orphanage fire. Years ago, John himself caused the fire after refusing to let the doctors continue experimenting on the immortal child. When he wakes up from the nightmare, he decides to reopen the hidden drawer he had locked away and continue investigating everything from the beginning. Meanwhile, Chae Ni happily throws away all of her medications now that she believes she is finally free from death forever. She becomes excited thinking about all the places she can teleport to. At one point, she even imagines herself flying all the way into the sky just to enjoy the view from above. Honestly, nobody understands what goes on inside this girl's brain. The next day, Chae Ni gathers her chaotic little group and proudly drags them to John, saying, "Congratulations, boss. I gathered the team you wanted." But the moment John discovers that the Church of Salvation is involved, he immediately tries pushing them away. He explains that before they can fight anyone, they first need to understand where their powers come from, how they work, and how to control them. According to him, the only way to do that is by hiding far away from the people hunting them. At the same time, Chae Ni's grandmother is watching security footage with one of her assistants when he suddenly reveals that Chae Ni possesses supernatural powers. Her grandmother becomes terrified for her safety and quickly tries calling her, but the signal suddenly cuts off. Instead, the mysterious young man connected to Dr. Wando contacts her. That is when the girl working with the doctor finally appears and asks directly, "Where is the immortal child?" Chae Ni's grandmother coldly replies, "Dead, completely dead," but the girl threatens her immediately, promising to make her life a living hell. She accuses the grandmother of only caring about saving the immortal child while abandoning all the other children. Then she warns her that if they do not find the body, she should consider herself dead too. Afterward, the grandmother contacts her assistant and urgently orders him to find Chae Ni before it is too late. Meanwhile, John takes the group to a hidden place, but it turns out to be a trap. Suddenly, his old orphanage friend appears and tries to kill him. Chae Ni desperately attempts to teleport everyone away. After several failed tries, she finally succeeds in escaping with John, then returns to grab Robin too. Unfortunately, she cannot save Sun because he is literally stuck to the ceiling with his power. Chae Ni tries helping John escape as well, but things spiral out of control when a car crashes toward them. At the last second, she manages to grab John and teleport both of them all the way to the Northern Lights. For the first time in her life, Chae Ni has finally left her tiny town and traveled somewhere far away. Standing beneath the glowing aurora, she becomes overwhelmed with happiness. Then she confidently tells herself, "Well, I'm the immortal child anyway. I'm obviously not going to die." Meanwhile, Robin is left alone behind. After struggling for a while, he finally manages to free himself from the wrecked car. Completely clueless about what is happening, he starts treating the entire situation like a game and begins smashing cars around with John's co-worker. Back with John and Chae Ni, John desperately tries waking her up after the escape and slowly begins losing hope until she suddenly wakes up on her own. Elsewhere, Bal, John's former orphanage friend, becomes exhausted after his fight with Robin. Horan starts provoking him, but another girl steps in to calm the situation and reminds him to control himself better. Horan later apologizes to him, and he curiously asks why she likes John so much. And yes, she is another girl secretly in love with our handsome hero. Her reason is hilariously simple. He smiled at me once. Later, we see Chae Ni at John's house trying to take care of him. When he wakes up and notices the medicine and her little note beside him, he feels genuinely touched that someone actually cares about him. But the sweet moment does not last long, because the next time he sees them at work, his senior co-worker warns him that he needs to get rid of them all. Soon after, Horan visits John while he is stuck dealing with his team of hopeless disasters. John is trying to teach them how to understand and use their powers properly. He eventually discovers Robin's trigger. Robin's powers activate whenever Sun insults or provokes him emotionally. And honestly, poor John is the one suffering in the middle of all their chaos. When Horan finally gets a chance to speak privately with John, he seems genuinely happy to see her, but he quickly becomes upset after realizing she still considers Dr. Wondo a father figure. She asks him whether he seriously plans to stay with those useless losers, and John calmly answers yes. So Horan decides to manipulate the group against each other. Her tricks work perfectly, causing them to start fighting because of misunderstandings and jealousy. John becomes furious enough to grab her aggressively before finally stopping himself. Horan walks away heartbroken after seeing how much John has changed. Later, John and Chae Ni grow much closer together. For the first time, John openly tells her about the immortal child and explains that the child is probably dead since nobody has seen them in years. Chae Ni becomes confused and asks, "How can the child be dead if you said they can't die?" That is when John finally explains the horrifying truth. The immortal child did not simply stop breathing temporarily. The child actually died and came back to life. Chae Ni freezes in shock as John tells her that her grandmother knows the entire truth. She was the one who funded Dr. Wondo's project from the very beginning. When Chae Ni confronts her grandmother, the heartbreaking reality finally comes out. The immortal child was badly injured, and their heart had to be transplanted into another person. Chae Ni realizes that the surgery she underwent as a child was never an ordinary heart operation. She received the immortal child's heart. The moment she learns this truth, Chae Ni runs out of the house in complete shock. She blames herself for everything John suffered through because of the experiments. Luckily, John notices her and quietly follows behind her, protecting her from danger without her even realizing it. The next day, John searches everywhere for Chae Ni and eventually learns she has been hiding at Robin's house, refusing to speak to anyone. Her grandmother tries leaving food for her there, and John helps her. Eventually, they all eat together, and Chae Ni finally decides to reconcile with her grandmother. When she visits her, she admits that what her grandmother did was truly difficult and painful. Her grandmother agrees, but Chae Ni comforts her instead, promising to stay by her side and live her life fully until the very end. Hearing those words fills the grandmother with happiness and relief. Meanwhile, John continues researching the source of everyone's powers. Eventually, they discover the triggers. Chae Ni's powers activate through coffee. Sun's powers activate whenever he lies. Robin's powers activate through insults, bullying, or emotional pain. As John tries learning more about Chae Ni's abilities, the two constantly miss each other because she keeps teleporting away and returning randomly. But eventually, Chae Ni surprises him by planning a special dinner for all four of them together. Then comes an emotional moment. Chae Ni secretly buys a cake and throws John a birthday celebration because she knows he has always been lonely, but the happiness turns into betrayal when John suddenly hands her over to Dr. Wondo. However, it turns out he did not completely betray her. Before giving her away, he secretly spilled coffee onto her clothes so she would still be able to use her powers and escape if needed. Sadly, John only agreed because they promised him access to his hidden file and information about his real parents. Even though he hated the decision, he believed he had no other choice. Chae Ni eventually escapes and confronts him directly. John refuses to apologize, tears, admitting he truly felt trapped with no way out. But Robin angrily tells him, "You could have rescued me yourself, instead of secretly leaving coffee on my clothes." Then Chae Ni silently sheds a tear onto John's cheek before returning voluntarily to the enemy's base. This time, however, they capture her completely and tie her down. Dr. Wando begins psychologically destroying her. He explains that her grandmother made the same choice they did, except she selfishly saved only Chae Ni using a heart that did not belong to her. Meanwhile, according to him, his organization is trying to save all children. Then he cruelly tells her, "You are completely useless. What purpose do you even have? What dream? What passion? You lived 27 years doing absolutely nothing. You don't deserve that heart." Poor Chae Ni completely breaks down crying. Then the mysterious girl watching through the cameras begins manipulating Chae Ni mentally too, telling her that she can still become useful by sacrificing herself so the others can survive. The girl whispers terrifyingly, "You'll die, and you'll be happy while dying too, so go ahead, die." Meanwhile, Sun finally attempts to tell his wife the truth about his powers, but she laughs bitterly and reminds him that he has lied so much throughout his life that nobody can believe him anymore. She refuses to go anywhere with him and assumes he caused another disaster somehow. Sun desperately explains that Chae Ni was kidnapped and that the Church of Salvation is behind everything, but she refuses to listen and walks away. At the same time, Chae Ni's grandmother desperately tries contacting another partner connected to Dr. Wando, but she cannot reach him. When she visits his home, she is told he is away on business and that his activities are confidential. She first assumes he may be at the hospital, but then her assistant suddenly calls and reveals the shocking truth. The man is actually inside the Church of Salvation. Here is the perfect English story translation. Sun tells Robin everything, but Robin still cannot believe that the strange, handsome guy could really do something like that. He says John probably just ate cake with Chae Ni, fell in love with her, and ran away with her, and that Sun is definitely lying. But when a pot lid suddenly sticks to Sun's hand, Robin finally believes him and starts worrying about Chae Ni. Sun tells him, "Brother, worry about yourself first. What are we even supposed to do now? Where do we go? Where do we start?" Meanwhile, Chae Ni asks Dr. Wando, "If I die, does that mean I will save John?" But Wando mocks her and tells her to think about herself. He says John already benefited from handing her over because, in exchange, he will finally learn about his real family. Strangely, Chae Ni does not get angry. Instead, she says John probably chose his mother, and if that is the case, she accepts it. Robin, truly living up to his name as the most miserable man alive, tells Sun that nobody in his entire life ever helped him except Chae Ni. She stood beside him when he was bullied and protected him when no one else cared, but Sun cruelly tells him that someone else would probably be more useful than him anyway, and that he is not important and cannot do anything. This provokes Robin, and his power explodes. He rushes to John and attacks him with all his strength. John refuses to stay quiet and fights back too, but suddenly their phones ring. Sun calls Robin to warn him, while Chae Ni's grandmother calls John and asks to see him. When John visits Chae Ni's grandmother, she takes him into Chae Ni's room. He looks around and sees her photos with her grandmother, then notices her dreams written everywhere. Chae Ni wanted to live until 30, travel, recover, make friends, and simply live like any normal person. When John comes out, the grandmother tells him she understands his pain because he was also one of the children. She is not angry with him, and she is not asking him to save Chae Ni. She says she will save her herself, but she needs his help, even if it is just for one final meal together. John begins remembering all the moments he shared with Chae Ni and how deeply she affected his life in such a short time. He tells the grandmother that sometimes people think meeting someone from their past will give them a new beginning, only to realize they were wrong, and from his expression, it is clear he has decided to help her. When John leaves, he finds Sun and Robin waiting outside. trying to provoke him into saving Chae Ni. This time, John agrees. He calls the grandmother and tells her he will need people to help him. When she asks how many, he says maybe 100 or 200. John returns to work after submitting his resignation, but then takes it back. He begs his manager to help him just this once, and his manager finally gives him the full layout of the Church of Salvation. For the first time, John smiles, shocking his coworker, who jokes, "I thought you were battery-powered. I was still looking for where to change your batteries." Once John gets the church blueprint, he explains the plan to the others. Robin looks nervous, so Sun starts provoking him again, basically asking to be beaten. Robin unleashes his power and hits him hard, but soft-hearted John pulls him back and tells everyone that the police will not help them. In fact, the police are supporting the enemy. John says he will go alone, but Robin joins him, and Sun proudly says, "I'm coming too. Of course, I'm useful." Inside the church, Dr. Wando enters the room, and this time Jory finally confronts him. She asks what he is doing after learning that all her siblings now know he found the immortal child and is working on her. They all wonder why they are locked up. Jory tries using her power on him, but Wando tells her she no longer believes in him. Even though she knows she is his first daughter and the most important one to him, he then takes her outside to see what is happening and reassures her that she will be the first one he saves because she is his favorite. When everyone gathers outside the church, they discover that Chae Ni's grandmother's assistant is also one of the orphanage children, and he helps them sneak inside before locking the door behind them. Once inside, they try to take down the guards silently. Robin pulls a rope while John and Sun quietly capture the guards one by one. Meanwhile, Chae Ni is heartbroken because the enemies keep telling her she has no value and that they are going to give her heart to some useless old man. Dr. Wando tells her not to compare herself to anyone, then cruelly repeats that she is nothing, but Chae Ni answers that she is important to her grandmother. Robin only sees her as his precious friend, and Sun sees her as a burst of energy and light. But when she reaches John, she struggles to find one good thing to say about him. John quickly interrupts before she can say anything that ruins his mood. Suddenly, the lights go out, and all the surgical tools rise into the air. John appears and asks her in his dramatic way, "Do you love me, Huda?" Then he pulls her to safety. Chae Ni panics and says, "Oh no, you actually came?" John tells her he only came because of the people who love her, not because he wanted to. But now that he has decided to cause trouble, he might as well finish it. Then they start beating everyone in the room. After using up most of his energy, John gives Chae Ni a small bit of power and tells her to fly somewhere far away, somewhere quiet and beautiful. Robin and Sun are stunned by what they are seeing, but Chae Ni takes her little caffeine boost and immediately returns to John because, of course, she cannot just leave him alone. At the same time, Chae Ni's grandmother reports everything to the police. She tells them that what happened 20 years ago is happening again right now inside the Church of Salvation, and that they must save the victims, the people who disappeared, the people who died, and the people who are still being killed. But the police refuse to listen, saying that was all in the past. Furious, she raises her voice and orders them to move immediately and save her granddaughter. Meanwhile, Bao's eyes burn with rage, and he prepares to finish John. But Haran stops him and says, "Leave him to me this time." She begins attacking John emotionally, using his weaknesses against him. She shows him the friend who died because of him and drags his mind back to the day of the fire. She tells him his friend was waiting for him to save him, but he died because of John. She blames him for everything, saying they were all living peacefully with their father before John ruined everything. John breaks under the illusion, and his power explodes, shaking the whole place. At the same time, Robin becomes enraged when Bao calls him worthless and useless. His power activates, and he prepares to destroy him. When Chae Ni arrives and sees the chaos, she grabs Robin and tells him to take her to John. But she ends up reaching John alone. She tries to calm him down and hug him, but he does not wake up. She tries staying quiet, then even hits him. but nothing works, so she gives him a little caffeine and tells everyone to hold on to her quickly. Chae Ni teleports John and Robin back to the church. She tells Robin not to tell her grandmother anything. Once John wakes up, Robin should take him and leave, but Robin tells her, "Good morning, genius. Your grandmother is the one who made the plan." Unfortunately for Sun, his body sticks again. When Bao wakes up, Sun panics and starts lying about anything just to free himself and escape. Chae Ni starts searching for Sun, but then she suddenly sees Dr. Wando and the old man in another room. She secretly watches them. Wando has created a serum from Chae Ni and is about to inject it into the old man. Before starting, he orders his men to kill everyone in the room if anything happens to him. When he injects the old man, the man suddenly becomes young again, looking like a handsome gentleman in his 30s. Everyone becomes excited, but the effect does not last. The man starts aging again, even worse than before, coughing violently before collapsing dead. Dr. Wando's daughter rushes in to protect him and orders everyone to forget what they saw and leave the room immediately. Bao asks Wando if they succeeded, but Wando says the success is not complete yet, though it is still a historic step forward. He promises that one day they will succeed and that he will cure Bao, Horan, and all of them. But first, they must find her. Unfortunately, Chae Ni moves and makes a sound. Wando hears it, but his arm is now weak and damaged. When his daughter defends him, Wando insists that even if there is only one breath left in the water, they must continue so the cure can succeed. He says he is doing all of this for them. Later, Jory follows Baal and tells him not to push himself too hard because he is the important one, but Baal tells her that every time she defends him, it only makes him feel how weak he is. He asks her not to do it again. He says he is helping Wando for her, for himself, and for Horan too. Horan secretly hears everything. She remembers John and Chani standing together, and sadness fills her heart. She breaks down crying, drowning in jealousy and pain. When John finally reaches Chae Ni, she is casually drinking her expensive coffee again. The moment she sees him, she gives him affection, grabs him, and suddenly teleports straight into the middle of the Church of Salvation, landing right on everyone's heads. All the church members stare at her in shock and immediately begin whispering about her. They mock her, saying a failure like her must have come begging for salvation and immortality because she is terrified of dying. But the second Chae Ni turns back toward them, the entire room goes silent. Then she starts shouting at everyone, saying, "What's wrong with all of you? We all want to live, but you abandoned your real lives just to sit here doing nothing. What are you even gaining from this place? Get up already!" Unfortunately, Jorin immediately announces through the church speakers that intruders have entered the Church of Salvation. She tells the followers that true loyalty means finding those intruders, and whoever catches them will earn paradise and immortality. And of course, standing right in front of them is Miss Chae Ni herself. Chae Ni tries escaping the crowd, but suddenly John appears out of nowhere and saves her again. He tells her to quickly take Robin somewhere safe, then come back and help them later. After they successfully escape, Chae Ni teleports Robin home and immediately starts searching for any sharp weapons she can use to rescue John. Meanwhile, Chae Ni's grandmother calls her assistant and orders him to change the plan immediately after discovering that all the church members suddenly disappeared. She realizes something is terribly wrong. At the same time, John is fighting Bao, who is already on the verge of collapse. Bao tries provoking him emotionally, telling him that he completely forgot his origins and chose those worthless nobodies over his real family. But John confidently answers, "Yeah, I chose them. I'm with them and against you. So come at me already. I've been holding back for too long." Meanwhile, Sun is crawling across the ceiling trying to escape when he overhears people talking about how this is the end of the world. They reveal their plan to flood everyone with acid and kill them all. Sun panics and tries escaping, but when he reaches the outside, he finds countless brainwashed followers surrounding him. He completely breaks down, convinced he is about to die. until Chae Ni suddenly appears, grabs him, and teleports away with him to safety. After saving Sun, Chae Ni immediately starts looking for John, but there is no trace of him anywhere. When Sun begs her to escape and save herself, she refuses, saying she has to go back for John because he came to save her first. Sun then tells her everything he overheard about the acid attack. At first, she thinks he might be lying, but unfortunately, he is telling the truth. Still, she refuses to abandon John. At the same time, we finally see Joran trying to save Bao, but sadly it is already too late for him. Accepting his fate, Bao quietly tells her, "Tell the doctor I love him and that I'm sorry I couldn't live up to his expectations." Meanwhile, Sun starts crying that he wants to see his wife and daughter again and that he may never get another chance because everyone there is about to die. Chae Ni tells him she has already used almost all her caffeine, but then realizes she still has one last dose left. She tries explaining that she will come back for him, but Sun keeps screaming dramatically that he is a victim just like everyone else. Chae Ni finally gets annoyed, tells him to stop whining, grabs him, and teleports away. When she returns to show off her powers dramatically, the enemies immediately swarm her and beat her badly. But at the perfect moment, Chae Ni's grandmother finally appears with her backup plan and rescues her. Chae Ni becomes overjoyed seeing her grandmother again, but the very next second she asks, "Wait, where's John?" At the same time, John is confronting Dr. Wondo. John demands to know what exactly Wondo gained from all these experiments. Wondo explains that John should be happy because now he finally knows about his real family, and all those experiments were useful. He proudly says that discovering even one immortal child is an incredible achievement, and that if immortality can happen once, it can happen again. He insists humanity deserves a future where nobody dies. John stares at him in disbelief and says, "You call experiments useful when more children died than survived," but Wondo keeps rambling about how immortality could change the world forever. Finally, John makes his decision. He coldly tells Wondo, "You're the one who shouldn't live another day." But before he can finish him, dozens of guns are suddenly pointed at him. Unfortunately for them, they completely forgot about John's powers. He instantly reverses all the attacks back onto them, destroys the entire place just like he did years ago at the orphanage, and finally kills Dr. Wondo once and for all. When Joran tries reviving the doctor with the serum, nothing happens. Realizing he is truly dead, she contacts Horan and orders her to continue the plan exactly as instructed. Horan becomes worried about her, but Joran acts strangely calm and says everything is fine. She even tells Horan that Bao will not be coming back and that someone else will replace him. Meanwhile, Chae Ni desperately tries finding John. At first she fails, but then she remembers one of their moments together and finally manages to reach his location. Sadly, he is no longer there. She runs around searching again, only to discover that John was saved this time by the old man connected to Bao, the same man who abandoned him before. Elsewhere, one of the church followers informs Chae Ni's grandmother that 2 giant transport trucks recently left the church, though nobody knows what is inside them. Chae Ni immediately remembers what Sun overheard and realizes those trucks are carrying the chemicals meant to destroy the entire city. The assistant suggests calling the police, but Chae Ni bitterly replies that the church already bribed them, so it would be useless. Suddenly, Joran appears in front of them. Chae Ni's grandmother becomes worried for her, recognizing her as one of the orphanage children and noticing how hurt she looks. But Joran manipulates everyone's minds and orders them to kill Chae Ni and her grandmother immediately. Terrified for her grandmother's safety, Chae Ni grabs her and teleports away at once. Joran then breaks down emotionally, screaming that her father and brother just died and that she is losing her mind. She orders then chaos completely explodes. Chae Ni suddenly appears driving a huge bulldozer and starts destroying everything around her. Boom here, crash there. She teleports left and right while smashing the entire area apart. At the same time, Sun desperately searches for his wife and daughter. Once he finally reaches them, he starts warning everyone to evacuate immediately, but his wife feels embarrassed by his behavior and tries silencing him. Sun keeps screaming that everyone is going to die, while his daughter and wife grow increasingly humiliated. He even tries filing a complaint at City Hall, but the employee refuses to listen and mocks him, saying the days of crazy complaints about giant fish and disasters are over. Later, Sun reunites with Robin when she suddenly appears and sadly tells them that John and her grandmother are probably dead. Robin and Sun start panicking about what they should do next, but Chae Ni suddenly says with complete seriousness, "I don't even have a single picture with John. How can he die without us taking at least one photo together?" Sun completely loses his mind at her response and screams, "Wake up, you delusional girl! We're literally in the middle of a catastrophe!" Eventually, the group decides their first priority is finding the two dangerous trucks. After that, they will figure out the rest somehow. Meanwhile, Sun finally encourages his daughter for the first time in his life before helping her escape. Sadly, time is already running out, and the festival fireworks are about to begin. Then, Sun realizes the most logical place to hide the chemicals would be inside the fireworks themselves, so they can rain destruction over the entire city. At the same time, Robin and Chae Ni become happy because they finally found John alive. Unfortunately, Joran is still controlling Robin's mind and forcing him to attack them, but Robin finally shows true courage and protects Chae Ni instead. Still, Joran's power is stronger. Chae Ni suddenly gets the idea to grab a microphone so she can reach John mentally, but Joran attacks her before she can. However, Chae Ni outsmarts her, grabs the microphone anyway, and escapes. John finally regains his senses, hugs Chae Ni tightly, reassures her, and together they return to Robin. Meanwhile, Sun hides his wife and daughter and tells them that this time he finally wants to become someone useful. For once in his life, he wants to protect the people he loves. His wife tries stopping him, but Sun bravely runs back into danger. Soon, the team begins destroying all the fake copies Joran created. Each of them finally uses their powers correctly and fights like real heroes. Sun's wife and daughter watch in total shock, realizing that he and the others truly possess supernatural powers. But once again, happiness does not last, and everyone falls under mind control again. John quickly creates a new plan. Sun will distract Joran, while Robin and Chae Ni locate the fireworks trucks before all their efforts become meaningless. Sun immediately starts lying non-stop to activate his powers. He climbs the walls and finally reaches Joran, talking endlessly so she cannot fully control his mind. Unfortunately for him, Haran suddenly appears and smashes him in the head, knocking him down. At the same time, Chae Ni and Robin finally locate the fireworks trucks, only to get captured by the guards inside. Elsewhere, Joran tells Haran that they must continue and avenge their father and brother. Haran worries about her, but then walks toward John, and then a goodbye knife stab because she is jealous of Chae Ni. Before John can react, the church leader suddenly kills Haran instead. John tries protecting her because for a moment he mistakes her for Chae Ni. Then the real Chae Ni appears, and once again everyone's minds become twisted in chaos. Finally, the fireworks launch into the sky. Realizing there is no time left, Chae Ni comes up with a crazy plan nobody is allowed to argue about. She orders Sun to stick her directly onto the fireworks mechanism, launch her high into the sky with the chemicals, and trust that she will teleport back before dying because, after all, she is immortal. But kind-hearted John refuses and says, "If you're going up there, then I'm going with you." Chae Ni laughs at him and tells him to stay where he is because he is already injured enough. Then she tells Sun to throw her so John can catch her. Finally, she provokes Robin emotionally, so he uses his powers to launch them upward. At the very last second, Chae Ni successfully grabs the fireworks and teleports them far away from the city before they can explode. And just like that, everyone survives. Life slowly returns to normal afterward. Sun proudly acts like a hero in front of his wife, who remembers absolutely nothing about what happened. But one person still remembers remembers everything. His daughter, she thanks him sincerely, making Sun unbelievably happy that someone finally sees him as a hero. When Chae Ni disappears for a long time afterward, her grandmother even holds a funeral for her, hoping she might somehow return. And she actually does. Chae Ni casually appears during her own funeral, starts eating food like nothing happened, and secretly waits for one particular person. When John finally arrives, she immediately jumps onto him and clings to him after clearly not showering properly for days. After everything they went through, Chae Ni finally understands something important. Her value was never in the supernatural power she gained. Her true value was always in the people around her who genuinely loved her. And that is where our beautiful story ends, with 4 useless people finding each other and becoming a real team together. And just like that, our drama comes to an end.